Welcome to Anti-Fiction. This is a weekly nonfiction podcast where each week I, Christian Yates, pick a topic and then I invite two guest hosts to come and talk about stories relating to that topic. This week, welcome to the second week of the spookiest month of Anti-Fiction. This is our Possessions episode. So this is the first episode of Possessions, but the second week in Spooktober. I don't know.
Let's not try too hard.
Yeah. Tried to force that one, man.
Way to go, Star Wars.
Did my best. Anyway, my guest hosts this week are Michael Yates.
That's me.
And Jeff Purvis.
Hey there, hi there, ho there.
And our topic is possessions. And let's jump right to it, shall we? So this particular story that I'm about to tell you is, naturally a little bit fucked up. So the time is 1974. The place is the town of Ossett, which is in West Yorkshire County in England. And it is the story of Michael Taylor, who is, your average Joe. He's mild-mannered, and the house is described as a cheerful and happy house. He lives there with his wife, Christine, their 5 children, and the family dog.
I have to laugh for a second, because if you notice that, possessions never took place where the home was already shitty.
Right.
It's kind of like the demon just says, no, your life is fucked up enough. We're going to let you go.
You're going to get the struggle you're going through, and I'm just going to go fuck up this guy's life instead. You do you. Here's a $5.
So most of my information I got for this story I got from the True Crime Enthusiast. They've got like a really comprehensive article about it on their blog. So let me tell you about Michael Taylor. So he was a butcher. He he was mild-mannered, but known generally as like a loving husband and father. Although he was subject to minor bouts of depression because of a back injury that he had. But apart from that, normal dude. Nothing out of the ordinary with him. Now, Ossett, at the time, was a highly religious community, although the Taylors were not particularly religious themselves, and they rarely went to the church services around the town. But sometime during, one of Michael's periods of depression, someone in the community thought that maybe a spiritual intervention would be helpful in that time for him. So they introduced him to the Christian Fellowship Group, which was led by Pastor Marie Robinson. At this point, Michael starts getting really involved in the church and the community. He's now like an active member of the congregation, but it to his wife Christine is becoming more and more evident that he is having like an infatuation with the Pastor Marie Robinson, and at one point she calls him out in front of the church group for having a relationship with her that was carnal in nature. So they had been spending a lot of time together and like praying and doing the sign of the cross at each other in private, which is fucking weird. Just over and over. They would just like hang out, speak in tongues together, and
hey,
like,
is that what the kids are calling it these days?
What year did this all take?
1974.
1970s England. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Foreplay. That's the word I was looking for.
So they would go to this like fellowship group together, but then like spend more and more time just outside of the fellowship group with each other. They would try to use the power of God to exorcise people of their sins. They would speak in tongues. And they would engage in private rituals where they were trying to ward off what they believed was the evil power of the full moon. Yep.
They were boning.
Damn the moon.
So pretty much everybody in the congregation was pretty sure that Marie and Michael had a thing going on.
They were boning.
And it eventually came to a head. Michael's
No
behavior
pun
at home.
Hey!
Michael's behavior at home began to kind of change. He was spending less and less time with them. He was argumentative. He was irritable. And that was kind of a stark contrast from the way he used to be. So Christine realizes that he must be fucking Marie Robinson, so calls him out in front of the congregation. And at this point, Michael becomes, like, belligerently violent. And not toward Christine, toward Marie Robinson. So he had to be physically restrained because he lashed out both verbally and physically and was speaking in tongues. And then Marie started speaking in tongues, and like he's trying to like go kill her, and then like she just starts saying Jesus's name over and over again. And Christine starts doing the same thing, and Marie says that that is probably the only thing that kept her from being killed that day, was that she called on the name of Jesus, and Jesus saved her in that moment, right? So, Michael claimed he had no memory of this event. But a couple of priests decided that it was probably a good idea to maybe perform an exorcism. So he was given forgiveness from the church, but nobody could forget it. So they call on the priests, and the priests come out to do an exorcism. So the two ministers, by the names of Father Peter Vincent and the Reverend Raymond Smith, were brought in to carry it out, and the exorcism was set to happen for midnight on the 5th of October, 1974, at St. Tames Church in Barnsley. So that night, in front of the congregation of the Christian Fellowship Group, the two ministers began the harrowing ritual, which would prove to last through the night and well into the next morning. As soon as the exorcism had started, Michael went into uncontrollable convulsions and fits and bouts of scratching, spitting, and biting, requiring him to be forcefully tied to the floor, and over the next 8 hours, Michael was subjected to all sorts of indignities, such as having crucifixes shoved into his mouth and being doused with holy water. So that seems like a great way to exercise. I don't feel like either of these men knew what they were. I don't think either had ever performed an exorcism before, because that doesn't sound. How are you going to shove a crucifix into some dude's mouth and be like, eat this cross and then Jesus
healed.
will help you? Like, inside is where all the demons are. Let's just shove the crucifix down in there so that they can see it.
So there's a certain amount of logic behind it. Then.
I guess.
Just a very basic, primitive logic.
So the whole time, Michael was growling and snapping at anyone who came near him.
I'd be pissed too.
Right. The priests in charge of the exorcism claimed that the ceremony had managed to ascertain that there were about 40 demons inhabiting Michael's body, representing such traits as incest, bestiality, blasphemy, lewdness, heresy, masochism, and carnal knowledge. So, okay. So the demons did not want to come out of him easily, and they had, like, each one had to reportedly be dragged out of him kicking and screaming. So after 8 hours of this, by 8 a.m. on October 6, 1974, the priests carrying out the exorcism could no longer continue through exhaustion. They succeeded in pulling out about 40 demons from Michael Taylor, but there were at least 3 left inside. And I'm like, that's not a success. that's not. How exhausting does the exorcism have to be that you can't get 3 more demons out of this man? And the demons apparently that were still left inside of him don't sound great because they were the demons of insanity, anger, and murder.
You think that they should have like
Right.
prioritized
Started with them?
Right,
prioritized,
maybe,
be like,
yeah.
let's get rid of the murder one first.
Right? They were like, let's pick out the easy
Then
ones.
probably the insanity one.
Yeah.
Then we'll go for anger and say, what are the ones that they actually got out then? Like the ones of like jaywalking and not paying parking tickets and shit.
So so the congregation who had been present for the exorcism agreed in part for one witness to the terrifying events, a minister's wife, claimed later that she had received a warning in her mind from what she believed to be God, saying that the demon of murder was going to escape from Michael and kill Christine. And I'm like, that would be great information for those priests to have, right? But the priest didn't care, I guess, because she pleaded with them to complete the exorcism, and they were like, no, everything's gonna be fine. There's only 3 demons left inside of him, and they can go home to rest. So they send Michael and Christine home to rest, and at 9:45 the next morning, October 7th, 1974, not 2 hours after Michael and Christine had been sent home to rest up and prepare for the next part of the exorcism, a police patrol car passing through the normally quiet streets of Osset came upon a shocking and unnerving sight. So they turned around a corner. They saw a man in the middle of the street, naked, covered head to toe in blood. And the patrolman got out of the car and... Sorry, there we go. So as he approached him, the man curled into a fetal position and heard him screaming over and over, "It is the blood of Satan." Turns out this was Michael Taylor. Surprise. Covered head to toe in
Shocked was
blood.
no one.
The man who had 3 demons left inside of him that the priests were like, it's fine, send him home. I got to take a nap. Now he's all
SpongeBob's
covered
on
in
at
blood.
6.
So apparently what had happened, Michael killed his wife.
Yeah. Sounds...
Horribly. So the officers went to Michael Taylor's house, and Christine Taylor, hold on, let me pull up my note about this real quick. So Christine Taylor was killed by Michael Taylor. Michael Taylor used his bare hands to tear out her eyes and tongue and almost tear her face off, and then he strangled the poodle. Yeah.
Now, see, I'm the one person to jump in and say, what the fuck did the dog do?
You know, that's probably the insanity and murder demons. They just wanted to crazy kill.
I'm just saying, it might have been a good idea to, like you mentioned earlier, get those out of the way.
Yeah, right.
There had to have
They're
been
really-
some,
Right.
drinking
Exorcists-
from the milk carton, demon that could have hung
Right.
around.
Yeah,
You'd have been fine.
exorcists
Right.
really need to learn how to prioritize tasks and stuff
Yeah, for sure.
instead of just diving in and
I
just
don't-
we'll just rip out any random demon. No, let's find the ones that need to go first.
I don't know how exorcisms work. So I don't know that you can pick and choose which demons you're pulling out, or if you're just like, power of Christ compels you, and the demon's
The
like,
weak ones
hey,
go
what's up?
first.
And then you're like, which demon are you? And you're like, I'm the demon of tax evasion. And they're like, well, pulling you out. We're taking you out.
What a defense that would be for an actual tax evader.
Right.
It's like, I'm possessed. My bad.
So he had literally torn her apart with his bare hands. She died of shock and asphyxiation on her own blood. And then Michael killed the dog, doing basically the same thing he did to his wife. He strangled and then ripped apart both of them. So It was described as being the most horrific crime scene that any police officer who had attended it was ever to see, which is probably
Accurate.
true.
Probably accurate.
So he was taken into police custody, and then after he's in police custody, so let me pull up my other note. There we go. So he goes to trial for the murder of his wife. The trial is in March of 1975, and he was acquitted on the grounds of insanity and sent to Broadmoor Hospital for 2 years, and then spent another 2 years in a secure ward in Bradford before being released. So he didn't even go to prison. He spent 4 years in a hospital and then like a psychiatric ward, and that's all he got for that. But turns out, in 2005, at the age of 61. Michael Taylor re-entered the news after being found guilty of indecently touching a teenage girl. So a week into his prison
the demon of pedophilia was still left as well.
probably,
by the sound of it.
yeah. Maybe they confused the anger demon with
the sexual assault demon.
sexual assault demon. That's a possibility. But yeah, so evidently the same kind of odd behavior that had been happening back in 1974 had been happening again. He went to prison for the assault
Kid
of the
diddling.
teenage girl. Yeah, there you go. And so they had apparently, in between the murder of his wife and the acquittal, and then in 2005 touching a kid, apparently had tried to commit suicide like 4 times unsuccessfully. And then the crazy came back. The demon of insanity was still rattling around in there. See, why didn't they try to exorcise the last 3 demons?
Did they? They never went back to do it again?
I never found any other stuff about it. He just
Wow. He's
he
like,
got arrested. The
well,
police were
he's
like,
already killed. There's
Yeah.
nothing we can do.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds plausible.
but yeah, they ordered again that he undergo psychiatric treatment. But that's all the information that I found about him since. So. Yeah, that's the story of Michael Taylor.
Way to go, Michael Taylor.
The man possessed by 40 demons, and 3 of them maybe are still inside of his body.
Maybe.
If demon possession is real. So
You'd think the demons would just move on by now.
maybe, but
I think that if he gets sent to prison, it was like, oh, well, there's not much shit we can do from here, so let's leave.
that's fair. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, demons are weird.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's my story. That's the story of Michael Taylor.
Oh, cool.
Alrighty.
So Mike, you've got some stories. Another anthology style, you said.
I actually, as I was reading my anthology, found one particular one that was more particularly interesting than the other ones. So
Oh, okay.
I do have now a single story that I can expand on much better.
Hey, cool.
than the other ones, and this is a pretty old one actually. Old as in 1672 Massachusetts.
Okay.
This is the possession of Elizabeth Knapp.
Okay.
So this predates the Salem witch trials by about 20 years. It's like the exact same area.
Right.
Though. It's not in Salem, but it's in.
But it's in Massachusetts.
The name of the town was Groton. However they pronounce it over there. So yeah.
Groton sounds like a
the
transformer.
possession. Groton. Yeah. And they all stack into one bigger New England colony.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, all right. The possession of Elizabeth Knapp of Groton, Massachusetts was documented by Samuel Willard, a prominent preacher in the Puritan Massachusetts Bay Colony from October 30th, 1671 to January 12th, 1672. More significantly, Willard sent letters to the Puritan minister Cotton Mather, who published an account of Elizabeth Knapp's possession in his Magnalia Christi Americana. The possession case of Elizabeth Knapp is unique and strange in the aspect that it was documented and approached from a thoughtful and scientific point of view.
Okay.
Knapp was the servant...
Wait, you mean that other demonic possessions aren't approached scientifically?
I guess not.
Interesting.
Yeah, who knew?
I can't wait to hear the 1600s version
1600s, 17th century science.
Right, I'm pretty sure that
yeah.
science in Puritan America was still pretty religious. Jesus, science.
If she weighs more than a duck, what, is that
There
what
you go, yeah.
Then she's a witch and she must be burned. All right, Knapp was the servant at the household of Samuel Willard, a prominent reverend in the Church of Groton. This became an issue because Willard was known for his sermons about damnation and obedience to God. One sermon in particular states that the youth of the town should have been very careful because although God is ready to receive them, the devil is ready to endeavor them. When Knapp, a member of his own household, began to show signs of demonic possession, Willard took a careful and scientific approach to the situation, which was rare for 17th century Puritan New England. He called in a medical doctor on several occasions and tried to find a cure for her symptoms. After they could find no explanation for her fits, he declared that it was a case of possession. So yeah, that's nice to see that happened. It's like, let's not jump to conclusions just yet.
Let's get the doctor in here first.
Let's not make sure that she really just doesn't have like indigestion,
right,
or something like that, like a hangnail,
right? I'd say she's possessed by 40 demons. She just
turns out she just had a stomach ache.
Yep, just a stomach ache.
Just a stomach ache, a little bit of nausea,
really bad one.
Nothing that'll
get her
the
Pepto.
Away. It's like, how long has she been having these fits? Approximately 35 minutes. She's like, okay, all right, let's dial that back. So yeah, throughout the entire process, he noted in his journal, Knapp seemed to have the most violent fits when he was present. Go figure. Willard carefully and meticulously documented Knapp daily from the night she first showed signs, Monday, October 30th, 1671, until January 12th, 1672. Willard states that Knapp, at first, began to complain of pains throughout her body. She would grab certain body parts, such as her leg, breast, and neck, and yell out particularly about strangulation. She would go through emotional fits, sometimes laughing to the point of hysterics, weeping, or screaming out. Hallucinations then followed. On several occasions, she claimed to see two persons walking around her. Also, she stated to have seen a man floating around her bed. Knapp also broke out into fits, particularly at nighttime, and would convulse on the ground. Then she tried to throw herself into the fire. Willard notes that on the first Sabbath day after the symptoms appeared, the young girl became violent, leaping and contorting her body to the point where it took 3 to 4 people to hold her down. As she was throwing these fits, she would yell out the words, "Money, money, sin and misery, misery." Willard
So it's the demons of greed.
Greed. Yeah, of greed and greed and investments.
That's one of the things I like the best about my story is that I don't know how they figured out that those were the particular demons.
We've
or
carefully
if that's universal. If they're like it's the demon of
actually
something.
they're all.
I'm just wondering how exactly you count them. Do you sit there? No, sit your ass back down. I already got you.
It's like 1, 2. Stop moving around.
I don't. I guess.
Willard then documented that on the night of November 2nd, 1671, Knapp made a confession of meeting with the devil, a characteristic of most possession cases. She stated that for 3 years, the devil met with her, promising her money, youth, ease from labor, and the ability to see the world. She then claimed that he had presented her with a book of blood covenants, which were signed by other women as well. She also said the devil had tried to get her to kill herself and others, Willard and his family included, but she could not do what he had asked. She continued with fits and
They forgot to put the demon of murder in there.
Yeah. If they'd have specified that, they might have been able to exercise
Well, it's the 1600s. He was still kind of learning his way around.
That's how they knew. By 1974,
devil.
That's how they knew. It's just like, thank you, Samuel Willard, for being very scientific about your demonic possession cases.
The actual devil was actually on holiday, so
this is like
the substitute fill-in devil.
This is why you don't outsource.
Right. Yeah.
This is it.
I mean, we saw that in the NFL a few years ago. So.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, where the devil was playing QB for the
no,
the
when they were actually the referees. Anyway. All right. She continued with fits and apparitions of the devil and various other spirits until the night of November 28th, in which she had a fit lasting for 48 hours. Afterwards, she was in a catatonic state until the night of December 8th, in which she made the confession that after being assaulted by the devil various times, she made the pact with him and allowed him into her bed. Willard's journal...
She fucked the devil?
I mean, don't jump to conclusions there, Christian.
I'm approaching this scientifically. I hear, I let the devil into my bed. I'm like, did you fuck the devil?
I mean, there's other things you can do in a bed, like sleep.
Was she sleeping with the devil?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean fucking the... Anyways. God damn it. Willow's journal continued on to state that she, throughout the month of December, goes in and out of violent fits, one much worse than the next. She talks in a strange, deep voice and made animal sounds. It is also...
Moo.
It is also during these few weeks that Willard states the devil talked through her body, calling him a rogue minister. Willard's entries do not begin again until January 10th, 1672, where he writes that he met with Knapp again. She confessed to him that the devil had control of her body and that he was much more powerful than she was. She stated that he also took hold of her speech, and she had no control of the things that she was saying. The next night, she went into a fit of hysterical crying and weeping, in which she called for Willard's presence. The fits held her till late in the night, as long as Willard tarried, which was more than an hour. I left her in them, and thus she continued speechless to this instant, January 15th. After this night, Willard ends his documentation of the possession case, stating that he will leave it to those who are more learned, aged, and judicious than he was. Willard concluded his entries with a final 4 points in which he gave his final opinions about the validity of the possession case. In the first point, he stated that Knapp's distemper in no way can be counterfeit on the grounds that it was physically impossible to fake such actions. The second point refers to whether or not her temper was natural or diabolical, in which he stated, because of the length of her convulsions and the strength of her fits, he believed them to be diabolical. In the third point, he concluded that even though many were skeptical of the fact that the devil talked through the girl, he was convinced. He stated on several occasions she spoke with her mouth closed, her throat would swell up like a balloon, and the voices that he heard were not her own. However, in the fourth point, he said he has strong doubts about Knapp making a pact with the devil. This is because she is so contradictory about the facts and what happened in her supposed meetings with the devil. Willard went on to give several powerful sermons in the village of Salem during the Salem witch trials in 1692, as well as discredited evidence of conviction for several women during the trials, stating that the trials should be held in a fair and legal way. After Willard stopped entries into his journal, it has been a historical mystery what happened to Knapp. However, her case has been cited and used as examples by various historians.
Huh. Well, don't sleep with the devil.
Try not to do that. If you can avoid it, try to avoid it, please. I have some extra stuff as well. In the study of witchcraft in history, there has been many psychological theories that have arisen as to why so many possession cases took place during the 17th and 18th centuries. One theory is the strict religious atmosphere at the time. It is apparent that most possession cases took place in areas in which religion was the predominant aspect of the society. This could be responsible in the aspect that Knapp felt confined in her community and was frustrated with her situations. She acted out, both mentally and physically, in the only way that she knew, which was through religion. By saying and acting as if she was possessed by the devil, she was rebelling against the institution which was restricting her. For example, when Knapp stated that the devil tried to bribe her on several occasions with fine silks and an ease of labor, her giving in would have been her breaking down her Christian loyalties. A second explanation could be in regards to dissatisfaction that Elizabeth Knapp felt about her place in society. Once she began showing her symptoms, she no longer was required to do her work as a servant. Servants in Puritan New England were treated harshly, especially women who were expected to do most of the manual labor. They had to care for the entire house and the children. She used the possession as an excuse to speak out against all those who held authority over her, for example, Willard, her master and reverend, and her father. The possession, in a sense, moved her up in a place in society. Knapp was no longer a 16-year-old girl, but an important person who was known throughout the town. No longer considered just a child, Knapp now had a place in the Puritan society, which did not involve being someone's servant. Oh yeah, I didn't know if that had come up. She was 16 at the time when she was
I gotcha.
quote unquote possessed.
Well,
That's one way to get out of chores.
I guess.
I mean,
that's
that's
I
a
feel
lot
like
of
it's extreme, but also
if
like
it's not true, that's a lot of commitment to the bit.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, if nothing else, dedication.
That's that Andy
Method
Kaufman
act.
level
Yeah.
of
become the character. Yeah.
Method actors, right?
Holy shit! All right.
So,
Well,
yeah, that was one of the older cases that I found. I don't think it was the first ever documented case of
right.
demonic possession.
No,
but
I
it was
can't
definitely,
imagine,
I think,
but-
the first one I've seen at least approached from a somewhat level of sensibility.
Right. Call the doctor
Yeah,
first.
call the doctor first, and then even he's like,
and then
yeah,
call the
keep
priest.
notes, and he's actually pretty objective about the whole
Right.
scenario.
Even at the end, he was
Yeah,
like,
even at the end, he's like,
I don't know
yeah, I
that
don't
she
know.
made a pact with the devil, but yeah, no, she was probably possessed.
No,
That was
he's like,
fucking
it's possible
crazy.
she was possessed given the physicality of what was going on,
Right.
but I don't necessarily think that she's,
right.
a servant of the devil, because apparently she didn't want to be a servant to anyone, as it turns out, and that he was actually the level-headed one in the fucking Salem witch trials.
Right. Well, hold on now, folks. Let's approach this scientifically,
So,
like I did with that demonic possession.
Yeah, so shout out to Samuel Willard
Yeah. Wherever you are.
for being an objectively minded person in the 17th century.
Yeah,
Yeah, wherever
you
he's buried.
Yeah, you didn't come across those too many in the 17th century.
No.
Well, hey, thanks, Mike.
I'm glad I had a good one.
Hell
instead.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
nuts.
glad I was able to find something interesting to expand on rather than just read a small collection, because the summarized version of that was not nearly that interesting.
I feel it.
Yeah.
Well, so Jeff, I understand that you have a very famous possession for us.
When you think of, probably movies-wise, what would be the most famous movie about demonic possession that just jumps to mind?
The fucking
The
The
Exorcist.
Exorcist.
Yes, sir. So we have for you today the tale of Roland Doe, the young boy that the movie The Exorcist was actually based on, his story. Starts with a troubled boy. The true story behind The Exorcist begins in the late 1940s in suburban Washington, D.C., with a family named Hunkler. Their 13-year-old boy, believed to be named Ronald, later referred to pseudonymously in the literature as Roland Doe, among other names, was despondent over the loss of his beloved Aunt Harriet, a spiritualist, who taught him many things, including, dun-dun-dun, how to use a Ouija board.
Oh, good.
This never goes terribly.
Classic.
You've
That's
never
a
seen one
classic
of
way
those.
to get possessed.
Yeah, you've never seen a movie where that comes out and just.
It's like nothing
Right,
happened.
and it was just a happy-go-lucky
yeah,
time.
it's like, hey, let's play with this Ouija board, ha 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 ha, and then nothing happens for the rest of the movie. It's
That's why.
always what
Hats
makes the
off
bad
to
things
Parker
happen.
Brothers for like mass marketing Ouija boards.
Right.
Way to go.
In early January 1949, after Harriet's death, Ronald began to experience strange things. He heard scratching sounds coming from the floors and walls of his room. Water dripped inexplicably from pipes in the walls. And the most troubling thing was that his mattress would suddenly move. Disturbed, Ronald's family sought the help of every expert they knew. The Hunklers consulted doctors, psychiatrists, and their local Lutheran minister, but they were no help. The minister suggested the family seek the assistance of the Jesuits. Father E. Albert Hughes, the local Catholic priest, asked his superior's permission to perform an exorcism on the boy in late February 1949. So that's interesting to note. You can't just arbitrarily jump up
Right.
as a priest and say, yeah, I'm going to do an exorcism.
Well, they
You had to
at
be-
one point had to be approved by the Vatican.
You had to be
didn't they?
licensed to exercise.
Well, yeah. You got to have a license to exercise.
But even having the license, you still had to have papal approval.
yeah.
However, Hughes stopped the rite. So he started it. He tried doing it there in February 1949. He stopped, though, after Ronald broke off a piece of the spring from the mattress he had been tied to and lashed the priest across his shoulders with it.
Shit.
So apparently all it took was one, little scratch, and priest said, fuck you, I'm out.
Right.
I've done all I can. Y'all are on your own.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
Looks like the demon of bed springs is inside this boy.
Exactly.
the MacGyver demon.
Yeah, the MacGyver demon.
This is one of my favorite parts
like
here,
that.
just because it just strikes me as ridiculous. A few days later, red scratches appeared on the boy. One of the scratches formed the word Louis, Louis, which indicated to Ronald's mother the family needed to go to St. Louis. Because what the hell else would pop into your
hold
head?
on. So the demon possessing the boy forms the word Lewis,
Uh-huh.
and they're like, "Let's go to the place the demon is saying." Mm-hmm. It wasn't St. Louis either. It was
No,
just Louis.
just
What
Louis.
what if the demon is like...
What
My
if he
name's
got
Louis.
tired and couldn't
That's-
finish
that's
Louisville?
Not,
Right.
You know,
not what
what's-
this means at all.
right.
You guys are so horrible.
Or like, what if the demon was just writing his own name? It's like, "Hey, I'm Lewis."
Louis, I just learned how
I just wanted to say hi.
Yeah.
I just want some friends.
Yeah, you can only imagine the demon sitting in the corner of the room. That's not what I'm saying.
It's like that's no. That's not where I wanted to
Humans
go.
are stupid.
Why did I even bother?
Why did I
possessing
pick
one
this
of these?
family?
Yeah.
Why this family?
I should have picked like the kid of an astrophysicist or someone smart, for Jesus Christ's sake. And then he like expels himself because he
Right,
said
yeah.
Jesus Christ.
That's it. I'm good. So, excuse me, Father, just a little bit of holy water. You know what? Doesn't even have to be holy water. Just get some tap water. Throw it on the body. I'm gone.
Actually, yeah, just
I'm
actually, you know
out.
what? Just throw me in the lake real quick.
And I'm good. So, yes, they decided that they needed to go to St. Louis, where they had relatives, in order to find a way to save their son. So, just to remind you, we had priest number one who tried it, got a
Right.
boo-boo,
Yeah.
and said, all right,
I'm
fuck
out.
this, I'm out. Round two, apparently they decided to up the ante on this one.
Two
Okay.
priests.
A cousin of the family was attending St. Louis University at the time of Ronald's struggles. She put the Hunklers in touch with Father Walter H. Halloran and Reverend William Bowdern. After consulting with the university's president, these two Jesuits agreed to perform an exorcism on young Ronald with the help of several assistants. So now we've got a whole team.
Right? It's like the Avengers, but for exorcisms.
Kind of.
There was an idea.
Iron Man goes in, gets his ass kicked, and said, okay, now I've got a
Right.
team.
Let's send in the big guns.
The men gathered...
You have the big gun. You're not the big,
Big
gun.
The men gathered at the residence on Roanoke Drive in early March of 1949. So now they've moved to this new house in suburban St. Louis,
Right.
which the article and all I found actually has a nice little picture of it. It's a nice little quaint house that, yeah, we're going to come in and fuck shit up.
Right.
The exorcist witnessed scratching on the boy's body and the mattress moving violently. These were the same types of things that happened in Maryland when the exorcism failed. Amid these bizarre happenings, Bowdern and Halloran, according to their reports, noticed a pattern in Ronald's behavior. He was calm and normal during the day, but at night, after settling in for bed, he would exhibit strange behavior, including screaming and wild outbursts. Clearly details that identify this as the true story connected with The Exorcist. Because
Sounds like
that
he
was
just
one of the
didn't
big
wanna go to
things.
bed.
Right, yeah. That's what
Some
this whole
say
thing was
demonic
about.
possession. I might chalk it up as
He wanted to. Well, this is
irritating shit.
Too long ago, but like in modern day time, that would translate to I just want to play more Xbox.
Right.
That's what I want.
He's the Caillou of the 1940s.
Oh Jesus Christ! Fuck Caillou.
Ronald would also enter into a trance-like state and start making sounds in a guttural voice. The priest supposedly also saw
No, that's just how he sounds, Father.
And thus, death metal was invented.
His voice dropped at a very young age.
On a related note, the young boy was actually one Peter Steele of Typo Negative.
I thought you were reading that for a second.
Ronald would enter a trance-like state. The priest supposedly also saw mysteriously flying objects in the boy's presence and noted that he would act violently when he saw any sacred object presented by the attending Jesuits. Probably because he knew you were about to, seriously fuck with him for the next few
Right?
hours.
You were going to shove crucifixes
fixes
down his throat.
This is how you exercise.
They
right?
waterboard him with holy water, and
Now,
like they just keep
honestly, when
shoving-
you started to make that statement earlier, my first thought was they shoved him up his ass? Jesus. What kind of
How-
barbaric shit did
How do exorcism?
they didn't have Google, so they didn't know how to
It's like
do
that
it.
picture of the dog on a computer. It's just like, I have no idea what I am doing.
At one point during the weeks-long ordeal, so this was,
Shit.
this is ongoing exorcism. This wasn't just a, one and done, hey, we're good. This shit went on for a while. That
Right.
they kept coming back, and during the weeks-long ordeal, Bowdern reportedly saw an X appear in scratches on Ronald's chest, which the priest believed signified the number 10.
All
right.
Yeah. Okay.
And my first thought when I saw that was, okay, but we do explain why 10 was apparently important. In another incident, a pitchfork-shaped pattern of red lines moved from the boy's thigh and snaked down towards his ankle. These types of things happened every night for more than a month, and everyone witnessing the events believed that Roland was possessed by 10 demons.
Ah.
So apparently he wasn't worthy
Naturally.
of, what was it, 40?
40.
Right.
Or the apparent one in my case.
So
What
this
if it was
like-
an X marks the spot thing? Like they were
here for
physically
very
hiding
Did you
at
hear?
the
I'll
cross
come right
point.
out. I'm right behind this.
I really just went out because you guys fucking went to St. Louis, and that's not what I wanted
On
at all.
it. You
I
really
hate St. Louis.
misunderstood me.
I don't even want to be here.
That stupid fucking arch. Stupid fucking river.
The two priests never gave up. The exorcism continued night after night. On the evening of March 20th, the exorcism reached an unhealthy new level because everything was perfectly
Oh,
fine
yeah,
up
Everything
to
was
this
actually
point.
well
That
within
seems
CDC
that seems
guidelines
normal
so
up until
far.
now.
Okay. The exorcism reached an unhealthy new level. Ronald urinated all over his bed and began shouting and cursing at the priest. What the hell had been going on prior to this? That this was like, oh shit, now we need mean business.
This is some next fucking level
Oh,
shit.
We need
Hold
to
on,
call the
how,
Pope.
how old is the kid at this point?
They don't specify.
They don't
actually.
specify,
He's
okay.
I believe the guess, and it kind of this little article and all kind of gets into that to protect the innocent sort of thing. They didn't give his actual name, although they give the family name, so it's
Right.
not like it would be difficult.
Right.
And they also like changed his age and stuff like that because
Okay.
apparently, and I'll get to this point. Apparently, he only died fairly recently. On April 18th, a miracle occurred in Ronald's room. Oh, sorry. I jumped ahead. Two priests never gave up. March 20th, that's when he started peeing on the bed, and they were like, well, fuck, we're out of our depth. We could handle everything but public urination. Then
Right.
we're just screwed.
I'm getting really pissed.
They then took him to Alexian Brothers Hospital in St. Louis for more serious treatment. While at Alexian Brothers, a miracle occurred. It was the Monday after Easter, and Ronald awoke with seizures. Okay, I'm hoping you explain how that becomes a
What
miracle.
a miracle.
He yelled
He's
at the,
convulsing.
It's only seizures.
Praise God.
It's only seizures. No
He
more
yelled-
demonic possession.
boy, do we have egg on our face now.
We made
This
you
was
move all the
just
way
a
to St. Louis.
This was just a complete misdiagnosis. We are really
Boy,
sorry.
we really missed the boat. Our bad. He yelled at priests saying that Satan would always be with him. The priest laid holy relics, crucifixes, medals, and rosaries on the boy. At 10:45 that evening, the attending priest called on St. Michael to expel Satan from Ronald's body. They shouted at Satan, saying that St. Michael would battle him for Ronald's soul. 7 minutes later, Ronald came out of his trance and simply said, "He's gone." The boy recounted how he had had a vision that St. Michael vanquished Satan on a great battlefield. Now, at the risk of potentially offending some of your listeners, this kind of makes me wonder, okay, a couple of things. Number one, we waited until this point to call upon St. Michael?
Right? St. Michael sounds like he had it covered.
Yeah. Number two, was St. Michael just sitting off to the side going, yeah, I ain't doing shit till y'all ask me to.
Right?
I'm
Why,
just
why
going to
didn't
sit
you
back
help
here.
us before St. Michael? You didn't ask.
You didn't ask.
Right.
There were no more documented instances of strange occurrences and behavior after that. Ronald then went on to live a completely normal life. Now, this is, like I said, things, this is what became The Exorcist. The original Exorcist was the book by William Peter Blatty.
Yeah.
Wonderful book if you've never read. Really kind of screwed up. But he took certain liberties and all. Like he changed the character to a female, changed her from a teenager, is what Ronald was, to a 12-year-old girl. Mm-hmm. Kept the whole thing in D.C. Now, after the exorcism of Roland Doe, his family moved back to the East Coast. So, for all the neighbors of the house in St. Louis, thanks, guys. Good luck.
Right. And then that house never sold again.
Actually,
Interesting that you say so.
that is addressed as well.
Oh.
Says that sources say that Ronald found a wife and started a family. He named his first son Michael after the saint who he believed saved his soul.
Right, who battled the devil with a fiddle.
Now this
Something
is
like
they don't know for certain if Roland is still alive today. He would be in his early 80s, so they don't know for certain. Now they've never said they gave the last name. How hard could it be to track that?
Well, I mean, if his first name wasn't Roland.
Yeah, but still.
It's true.
So, like I said, he would be about 80s today. Both of the preachers have died. The room in the hospital has since been boarded up and sealed following the exorcism, and the entire facility was torn down in 1978.
Oh, so it doesn't even matter if they boarded up the room.
Right.
They're just going to tear it down. That seems like a lot of extra effort.
Well, and the house in Maryland, the one in D.C., has since been leveled. It's just an abandoned lot. Or at least it was as of the 60s. Let's see here. So, yeah, and here's a stretch. Again, we gave the family's last name. Experts believe the real name of Roland Doe is Ronald Hunkler, although only one person reportedly knows for sure because apparently everybody else is dead. Now, as for
really
the
puts a damper on things.
cozy house on Roanoke Drive, oddly enough, the house in St. Louis, was actually just bought in 2005.
Oh.
Apparently they have no problem with the, reputed claims that Satan once lived in the upstairs bedroom.
Well, you do you.
Yeah.
If you're cool with that the real estate agent who made that sale probably fucking lost their mind. Like, yes, I finally got rid of the Roanoke house.
I got rid of Satan's house. Yeah.
I have had this on
I'm
the
just
books
saying-
for 20 years.
I'm just saying whoever sold that fucker had best be like speaking at every realtor seminar
Right.
in the country.
Right.
Don't tell me you can't sell a house that has leaky pipes. I sold Satan's fucking house, okay? Oh, bullshit. You can't sell that.
My name is Janet Smith, and welcome to How to Sell a Haunted House. During this 5-hour TED Talk.
I mean, imagine what a dick move that was to everybody else in the realty office.
Right.
They could never come in. Well, I still haven't, Janet
I don't wanna
over there
hear it,
sold the
Jim.
Satan house.
Yeah,
just
you
saying.
sold the Satan house, man. I think the mold is the least of your
Concerns. There's mold in the ceiling, but is it possessed? Is it possessed by Satan?
No. Fix
Then
the mold.
suck it up,
Sell the
cupcake.
house.
But that is the story of Roland
Shit.
Doe,
Roland
the
Doe.
foundation for The Exorcist.
Holy shit. That's
Wow.
nuts.
And then they made a movie.
Yeah. Series
they
of
wrote
films.
a book and then they wrote a movie.
The only really good number
That he
one
probably
and
saw
2
no
were
money
good.
from.
3 was okay, and then they made all the little prequel ones that just went kind of off the rails.
Yeah.
And all the non-related generic possession of insert name here movies that they made.
All those though are also based on.
Yeah,
they'd
a
be
lot
based
a
on-
lot
I
of
was
those are all
torn.
based
I
on-
actually wanted to go with this one because it was the classic, but I also wanted to look up the one that I've never seen the movie. I've always wanted to. The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
That's one that I have heard from a lot of people actually is pretty good.
Because it went to trial. The girl died during the exorcism, and so I'd love to actually.
Oh, spoilers for the Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Yeah. By the way, if you haven't, Emily,
you know what?
Emily's
They've
not
had-
around to tell the story.
They've had a long time to watch. The movie's been out for a little while. It's been out
It's
for
like
at least
10
10
years.
years.
Yeah, because the heck's her name? Jennifer Carpenter.
I don't know.
Something. It's yeah, I think that's her name. It was while they were still doing Dexter. That she did that
Okay.
film. So.
Yeah, so
Hell yeah.
you've had plenty of time. If you're going to watch it, you would have watched
Yeah.
it by now.
Well, hell yeah. All right. Well, good episode, y'all.
Think so.
Oh, Jeff's phone going off. Watching a video about something. It's probably just porn. It's all good.
How unprofessional. No.
We run a quality show here, damn it.
Hey, well, thank you guys for being on the show today.
Yeah.
And, listeners, thanks for checking us out. Make sure you're hitting us up on Instagram and Twitter at AntiFictionCast. Email us or tweet us or whatever. Our email is antifictioncast@gmail.com. And, stay tuned for more ghosts and possessions for the entire month of October, and then probably I'll do something else after that. But until then, it's Spooky Fest. Is that better than Spooktober?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Because as you can see here, it's going to get pretty spooky.
It is true. All right. Well, thanks for checking us out. We will see you next week.
Ooh.